I thought my business was in reliable hands. Until I discovered that my partner was transferring money to accounts I knew nothing about. He was my friend, almost a brother. Now he is my biggest enemy, and I was going to take everything from him. I still remember the day Eric and I sealed our partnership with a handshake in that rundown coffee shop in downtown Chicago. We were just two ambitious business school graduates with a vision of creating something extraordinary. "Mason," he said to me that day, "we're going to build an empire together." I believed him. For 10 years, we worked tirelessly. Our first restaurant, a small bistro in Lincoln Park, barely broke even for the first 2 years. We lived on instant noodles and cheap coffee, pouring every cent back into the business. Eric handled the finances while I focused on operations and customer experience. It was a perfect partnership built on trust and complementary skills. By year 5, we had opened 3 more locations across Chicago. By year 7, we had expanded to Milwaukee and Indianapolis. Now, at year 10, Zenith Hospitality Group owned 15 upscale restaurants across the Midwest, employed over 500 people, and was valued at just under $30 million. We were no longer those desperate kids working 18-hour days, we were respected restaurant moguls with profiles in Forbes and Restaurant Business magazine. The morning everything changed started like any other. I was reviewing the quarterly reports in my downtown office when my assistant, Jessica, knocked on my door. "Mr. Caldwell, there's a package for you. It needs your signature." I signed for the manila envelope without much thought, assuming it was more contract paperwork for our upcoming Detroit location. When I opened it, I found a USB drive and a handwritten note, "Mason, you need to see this. A friend." Curiosity piqued, I plugged in the drive. What I found changed everything. Financial statements. Bank transfers. Corporate accounts I'd never heard of. Consistent withdrawals from our company reserves into offshore accounts. All bearing Eric's digital signature. At first, I thought it must be some kind of mistake or elaborate prank. But the documentation was too detailed, too extensive. According to these records, Eric had been siphoning company funds for at least 3 years. Small amounts at first, $10,000 here, $15,000 there, gradually increasing to 6-figure transfers. My stomach knotted as I scrolled through the files. One document particularly caught my attention, incorporation papers for a separate LLC registered solely in Eric's name, with assets that suspiciously matched what should have been our company's expansion fund. I closed my laptop and sat in silence, trying to process what I'd just discovered. Eric wasn't just stealing, he was systematically building a safety net that would leave me holding the bag if our business faced any legal troubles. My first instinct was to confront him immediately, to demand answers face to face. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the business strategist in me, or maybe it was the cold anger spreading through my chest like ice. Either way, I knew that confronting him without preparation would only give him time to cover his tracks. Instead, I called an old friend from business school who had become a forensic accountant. "Nathan, I need your help. This is confidential." Nathan arrived at my office after hours, and I showed him what I'd found. "This is sophisticated, Mason. He's been careful to keep the amounts below reporting thresholds. If you hadn't received these documents, it might have gone unnoticed for years." "How bad is it?" Nathan's expression was grim. "Based on what I'm seeing here, he's diverted nearly $3.2 million over the past 3 years. And he's structured the accounts in a way that would implicate you if there was ever an investigation." I took a deep breath. What do I do? If you want to build a case, we need to be methodical. I know some top-tier forensic investigators and lawyers who specialize in business fraud. But Mason, this will get ugly. I stared out my office window at the Chicago skyline, at the lights of the city where Eric and I had started our dream. I don't care. I want everything done by the book. I want him to lose everything, just like he planned for me. Over the next 8 weeks, I became an actor in my own life. Every morning, I greeted Eric with a smile in our headquarters. We discussed expansion plans, menu changes, marketing strategies. I laughed at his jokes during executive meetings and joined him for our traditional Friday evening drinks. All while a team of forensic accountants and attorneys built an airtight case against him. The hardest part was watching him continue to play the role of dedicated business partner. He'd put his arm around my shoulder and say things like, "Can you believe how far we've come, Mason? And this is just the beginning." Each time, I had to swallow the bitter taste of betrayal and remind myself to stay focused on the endgame. By week 6, we had everything. The investigators had traced money through a labyrinth of accounts. They'd uncovered tax evasion, deliberate misreporting of corporate assets, and even evidence that Eric had been inflating vendor invoices and pocketing the difference. My attorney, Samantha Weiss, laid out our options. "We can go to the authorities now. With what we have, he's looking at significant federal charges." I shook my head. "Not yet. I want him to feel what I felt. I want him to know that I know, and I want everyone else to know too." That's when I decided to orchestrate the investors' dinner, what Eric believed would be a celebration of our 10-year anniversary and an announcement of our expansion to the East Coast. I spared no expense. We rented a private dining room at Alinea, one of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants. I invited our top 20 investors, our board members, and key business partners. Eric was delighted, seeing it as an opportunity to further cement his reputation in the industry. The night of the dinner, I arrived early to ensure everything was perfect. The private room was set with elegant place settings, soft lighting, and a large projection screen at one end. I had instructed the staff that I would be giving a special presentation and needed everything to be precisely arranged. Eric arrived looking confident in his tailored Tom Ford suit, already working the room with his characteristic charm. He clapped me on the back when he saw me. "Mason. This place looks incredible. Tonight's going to be a night to remember." The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. "It certainly will be, Eric." Dinner proceeded smoothly through the appetizer and main course. Wine flowed freely, and conversation buzzed around the table. Many were discussing the hints of expansion I'd dropped in the invitation. Eric, seated at the opposite end of the table, kept raising his glass to me in silent toasts, his smile never wavering. When dessert was served, I stood and tapped my glass with a spoon. The room quieted. "First, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight to celebrate 10 incredible years of Zenith Hospitality Group." Applause rippled around the table. When Eric and I started this company, we had a simple philosophy: integrity in everything we do. I noticed Eric's smile falter slightly at the emphasis I placed on integrity. We believe that success comes not just from providing exceptional dining experiences, but from honest business practices and transparency with our partners and investors. I moved toward the projection screen and picked up a small remote. "Tonight, I'd like to give everyone a special look at the financial health of our company. A behind-the-scenes tour, if you will." Eric shifted in his seat, his expression now one of confusion. "Because transparency matters, doesn't it, Eric?" Before he could respond, I clicked the remote. The screen came to life with the first of many damning financial statements, a side-by-side comparison of the official books and what our investigation had uncovered. "What you're seeing here," I continued calmly, "is a discrepancy of $3.2 million between our reported assets and our actual holdings." The room fell completely silent. I clicked to the next slide, a series of bank transfers to offshore accounts, all bearing Eric's electronic signature. These transfers began approximately 3 years ago. Small at first, then increasingly bold. Eric's face had drained of color. He set down his whiskey glass with a shaking hand. "Mason, what the hell is this?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "This, Eric, is the truth. And there's more." For the next 15 minutes, I methodically walked our audience through the evidence, the shell companies, the doctored invoices, the tax evasion schemes. With each new revelation, Eric seemed to physically shrink in his chair. Several investors were furiously taking notes, others were making phone calls in hushed, angry tones. When I finished my presentation, I turned to face the room. I know this comes as a shock to all of you. It certainly did to me. But I believe in accountability, which is why I've already filed formal charges and provided all this evidence to the appropriate authorities. As if on cue, two plainclothes detectives entered the private dining room. One of them approached Eric. "Eric Donovan, I'm Detective Rodriguez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, tax evasion, and wire fraud." Eric stood up so abruptly that his chair crashed to the floor. "This is ridiculous. Mason, you can't be serious. We can talk about this." I approached him slowly as the detective began reading him his rights. Leaning in close, I whispered so only he could hear, "You would have left me with nothing. You would have watched them take everything from me while you relaxed on some beach with my money. Now you have nothing." His face contorted with rage and fear. "You son of a bitch," he hissed as the detective handcuffed him. "You planned this whole thing." I smiled. "I learned from the best, partner." The investors and board members watched in stunned silence as Eric was escorted out. As soon as the door closed behind them, the room erupted in questions and demands for more information. I spent the next hour reassuring everyone that the company was financially sound despite Eric's theft, and that I had implemented new internal controls to ensure nothing like this could happen again. By the end of the evening, I had salvaged most of our business relationships through sheer force of will and transparency. The next week was a whirlwind of legal meetings, press statements, and damage control. Eric's assets were frozen pending investigation. His wife filed for divorce upon learning that their Hamptons vacation home, purchased, as it turned out, with stolen company funds, would likely be seized. In an emergency board meeting, I proposed buying out Eric's ownership stake in the company at a symbolic value of $1, given the circumstances. The board unanimously approved. 3 months later, Eric pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation with authorities investigating similar schemes at other companies. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution. I visited him once before he was transferred to a minimum security facility in Colorado. The visiting room was sparse and clinical, nothing like the luxury we had both become accustomed to. Eric looked smaller somehow, his designer clothes replaced by a standard-issue jumpsuit, his confidence evaporated. "Why did you do it?" I asked him. It was the one question that still kept me awake at night. He stared at me for a long moment. "Because I could," he finally said. "Because it was easy. And because I convinced myself I deserved more than our agreement gave me. We were partners. We were friends." He laughed, a hollow sound. "In business, there are no friends, Mason. Just temporary allies. I thought you knew that." I stood to leave, suddenly tired of the sight of him. "Goodbye, Eric." "Wait," he called as I reached the door. "This perfect revenge you orchestrated. Did it fix anything? Do you feel better now?" I paused, considering his question. The truth was complicated. The company was mine now, stronger than ever after weathering the scandal. Our newest location in Boston was breaking revenue records. I had everything we'd built together, and he had nothing. Yet there was an emptiness to the victory. The late nights working with someone I trusted, the shared vision, the friendship I thought was real, those things couldn't be replaced. "No," I admitted. "It didn't fix anything. But it was justice." As I walked out of the prison into the bright sunlight, my phone buzzed with messages from the executive team about our upcoming board meeting. Life continued. Business thrived. I had won. I had my empire. But sometimes, in quiet moments between meetings or late at night in my penthouse overlooking the city, I wonder if Eric was right about one thing: in business, are there really only temporary allies? Or was he simply a man who couldn't recognize the value of true partnership? Either way, I had learned a valuable lesson: trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. And success, even when complete, can taste surprisingly hollow when built on the ashes of betrayal.